Today I'm going to be taking a look at a controller from PB Tails called, somewhat bizarrely, Choc. No idea why. So what I want to do is to find out, is this any good for Android gaming on the move? It's a small, light controller, so theoretically it should be, but let's take a look. So it's in a very kind of shiny box here, and if I open it up, yeah, this is the case it comes in. No, I didn't order this specially. This is the case. Inside we've got the controller, obviously, and a USB cable. The cable actually seems like a decent quality. It's got PB Tails on it, USB-A to USB-C. There's a manual which seems fairly thick, although flicking through it here, about half of it's in English, half of it's in Chinese, but there does seem to be a decent amount of information actually in here, so put that to one side. And here we have the controller itself. And as you can see, I'll just put it into the palm of my hand there, it is pretty compact. And it does feel lightweight as well. I mean, it's quite nice. Feels quite nice. Now, one of the things that's obviously of some concern is that it's got something of a unique design. And it's got quite a few angles on it. So one of the things I'll be checking out is this actually comfortable to play with, or are these going to be digging into your hand? But one thing I can't get over is this case. I mean, I don't know what to say really. I mean, what happened, PB Tails? Could you not secure the rights to use Barbie or something like that on the case? What gets me though is that with product design, you'd think that people would be sitting around a table going, okay, who's our target market? Who are we aiming this product at? Well, PB Tails, who are you aiming this product at? Because this ain't leaving the house for me, I can tell you that. I'm just astounded, quite frankly. I mean, yeah. I mean, the whole package kind of looks like they've just gone out of the way to be as weird and different as possible to catch people's eye, and they've succeeded. Okay, so I'm going to get this charged up and we'll take a closer look once I've done that. But let me give you my first impressions. I mean, just taking a quick look around the thing, I've got to say the buttons and the D-pad do look very small. You've got your L1, L2, R1, R2, yeah. Very kind of clicky, these. The thumbsticks look very spindly, but to be honest, they feel okay. I would have preferred concave thumbsticks as opposed to the convex, which these are, but they feel okay. You've got L3 and R3, and if we look there, you can see that the whole thing isn't particularly thick at all. But the size of these buttons and D-pad do concern me. So what I'm going to do is to compare this with some other controllers that I've got. So here's an 8-bit do controller. This is the SN30 Pro. It's the one designed for Xbox, as you can see, on Android. And let's measure the buttons up here. So on the PB Tails controller, you can see there we're looking at just over 7.2 millimeters. And the buttons on the 8-bit do, well, let's say just over 10.5. So that's quite a difference. Here's another 8-bit do. This one's the N30 Pro. I think these buttons are somewhere in between the two. So again, these buttons are bigger at 8.6. Miu Mini. So 7.9. So the buttons on the Miu Mini are actually bigger than the buttons on the PB Tails, which is just ridiculous. And here's two little mini controllers I've got. There's the 8-bit Do 02 and the iPega, I think it's 9193. And as you can see, these are tiny compared to the PB Tails. So looking at the buttons on this, so these are about 7 on the iPega. .19 on the 8-bit Do, and just to remind ourselves, 7.22. So looking at these in comparison, you really have to ask yourself, PB Tails, why are your buttons so small? That's just ridiculous. There's plenty of space here to play with. So let's take a look at the D-pad. So we're looking at 18.8 roughly on the PB Tails. You've got a bigger D-pad on the iPega. And bigger on the 8-bit Do 02. So yeah, I mean, I've no idea what on earth they were thinking when they designed this. I mean, you've got all this space, but a tiny D-pad, tiny buttons, it just makes no sense. But I guess the thing is to find out what it's actually like in use. Now, what it works with actually seems to be a matter of some confusion. On PB Tails' official webpage for the controller, there is no mention of the platforms it's designed to work with, which is kind of weird. But looking down the page, it does show icons for Windows, Switch and Android. However, unfortunately, the manual just adds to the confusion, making no mention of Android or how you might pair it with Android, or even if it really is compatible. Instead, it talks about the Switch and Windows, and throws macOS and Steam into the mix as well. But then, right near the back of the English section of the documentation in the Bluetooth section, it says supported platforms and lists Switch, computer and Android. In the end, I was exasperated by the lack of any pairing information for Android. So I thought, how hard can it be? There are only a few options normally, so I put my phone into pairing mode, pressed the pair button on the controller, nothing else, and it popped up for pairing straight away and showed as a Pro controller. When it pairs in Pro controller mode, RetroArch sees it as an 8-bit Do SN30 Pro controller in Switch mode. And the button mappings are just about all wrong, with things like a shoulder button mapping to the Y button in RetroArch, and basically it's a mess. Obviously, I made sure the RetroArch controller profiles were updated, but that did nothing to help. I tried this on different phones and it was the same story each time. However, if you'd prefer it to be seen as an Xbox controller, then I was able to get it paired as such by holding down the X button when pairing. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to successfully replicate this pairing method each time I tried it with different phones. It was hit and miss to say the least, with most attempts being a miss. On the times I did manage to get it paired as an Xbox controller, the button mappings were nothing like you'd expect from an Xbox controller, which was kind of confusing. But weird mappings was beginning to feel like the norm for this controller. In case you're wondering, A plus pair and B plus pair both connected it as a Pro controller again. I had the best success with pressing the pair button while holding down the Y button. This combination saw it get recognised as a generic gamepad, but this time all the buttons worked. Everything was mapped to the on-screen virtual controls on the gamepad tester software I was using. And when I tested the sticks for dead zones, I was pleased to see that they were absolutely fine. And honestly, when it was paired like this, it ran like a dream. Everything worked and it was recognised by RetroArch as a generic gamepad and worked perfectly. There seemed to be almost no lag, everything just worked. Now there might be some of you watching this who have used this controller before and are thinking, what an idiot, why didn't you press such and such a button combination? And if there is a better way of getting this paired up to Android, then please share that information in the comments section below, because all I've had to go by is the utterly useless documentation and some guesswork on my part. So you'd be doing myself and others a big favour if you know of a better way and can share it with us here. Now, one big question I suspect many of you have is it comfortable to hold? What with all those sharp looking angles? The answer is, it's not the most comfortable controller I've held, but I wouldn't describe it as uncomfortable either. Sure, I can feel the edges, but it's not like they're sharp or hurting me in any way. The little sticky out bits, let's face it, you can hardly call them handles, they do a pretty reasonable job of providing somewhere for your fingers to rest, and as well as adding some stability to the controller while you're holding it. If you're a Switch user, then this controller also has rumble and gyroscopic controls as well. And I think it might even be possible to use the vibration on PC as well. Although figuring any of this out is a trick in itself. You know, I can't help feeling that there is a nice little controller here that is completely going to waste because of a few dodgy design decisions and some bad documentation. I mean, you can have all the features in the world built into a controller, but if nobody knows how to access or use them, then what's the point? The documentation seems like something that's been written by a committee of people who have never even seen or used this controller, or the features it's meant to have, and aren't even familiar with the systems it's meant to be able to connect to. On the surface, the documentation looks like it should give you everything you need to know, but ultimately it tells you nothing useful. The whole controller and everything about it feels like it's designed to draw attention and be different, and in that respect it succeeds. It's just a pity all the effort seems to have gone into that, and so little has gone into documenting its features and accurately communicating to the public what it can do. And I think it could be a capable controller, but as it stands, everything about this, including the price, is all over the place. I've seen this on sale for prices between $30 and $60. At the top end of that range, I think they're going to be having a laugh. And even at the $30 price tag, I'd question its worth when compared to an 8-bit Do controller costing not much more. And as for that case,